those schools that most need the talented teachers are the ones that are going to most struggle to grab that talent. So we have some significant problems in this country on our own before we then think about how do we apply that model to the rest of the world and get to another 69 million teachers. On the current rate of progress, if we were to export the Western model of postgraduate educated teachers teaching classes of about 30, we would get there in 2084, which is 54 years too late for the Sustainable Development Goal. So the challenge that we think about at Brookings is how do we leapfrog? And it's an interesting challenge for you, and it may be something that we want to talk about in discussion, but what's the leapfrog that we could apply that doesn't base schooling on the current Western model of postgraduate educated individuals in front of classes of 30, but is able to scale the impact of those humans, and those humans that we can train to that level as subject specialists, as subject pedagogy specialists, and teach an extra 263 million children to teach and scale up some school reform that also fits the needs of a rapidly changing labour market. It's a big challenge. Now, there's one that you could argue has come up with an answer depending on what your vision for schooling is. So Bridge International Academy, I met the founders, they're very interesting, they've applied technology assiduously to this challenge. And they're active in countries like Nigeria and Liberia and so on. And what they've done is they've employed some experts in teaching and learning. Those experts have designed lessons right down to a granular level. They have designed a model of schooling that is, again, extremely detailed. They've essentially come up with the algorithm. It's not very, some of it's digital, some of it's analog, but they've come up with the algorithm for delivering didactic teaching at scale. And that teacher there is teaching with a script from a tablet computer to a group of children, but in environments where there really isn't any quality teaching at all to speak of, and where if you are a parent in Malawi and you're taking your children off the field, out of work to send them to school, you need a return on investment. And if the school is rubbish, why would you do it? So you want the school to teach them something, you want them to come out with a certificate, you want them to be able to advance in the end in their working life as a result of that education. And what that does do is it does get them through their literacy and numeracy tests. So at one level, it delivers for those parents, and it's pretty successful. And there may be a role for it in answering our challenge, but it's not the vision of schooling that I'm after. Because in the end, I don't believe that there is that much to be gained, and certainly there is a ceiling on what can be gained with scripted lessons delivered from tablets by modestly trained teachers. And what we don't yet know from Bridge is the point at which they start trusting teachers to develop professionalism and to move on as professionals. Now, and there may be an answer there, but I'm yet to hear it. But what Bridge has done is it's worked out the algorithm and it's really holistically applying technology. You could then say, if you've got the algorithm to do it in an analog way, why not just digitize the whole thing and have teachers as robots? I've got a friend of mine called Esther Wojcicki, who is a high school teacher in Palo Alto, and the first time I met her, I'm being heckled by a sound system. First time I met her in London 2 years ago, I said to Esther, "It's term time, what are you doing here? Who's looking after your class?" And she said, "Oh, don't worry about that. I log on to the class back in my hotel every now and then and just check in on them and make sure they're still on task. And she has a computer just like that one in a classroom, and when she turns it on from London or wherever she is, it rolls out of its docking station and it wanders around the classroom, and when she sees something she wants to comment on, a big Esther face appears and she starts talking to whoever's she wants to talk to, and they have a bit of a surprise, and it kind of works for her. But it works for her because she has a pedagogy that is significantly about project-based learning. She's a journalism teacher, extremely popular journalism class, and they're all on task because they're all massively motivated by highly relevant learning to them as individuals, publishing a plethora of different publications that they then distribute in Palo Alto. But in the end, I don't think robots are the answer. And I think a false part of the debate about the future of work is this notion that we should all worry about technology because our whole jobs are going to be replaced by robots. There are very few jobs that will be replaced by a robot. But what I want to then go on to talk about is that I think there will be parts of jobs that can be replaced by machines. And that's something we could get excited about. But what do I want? Well, there's a very interesting book that I spent a lot of last year talking about, called The End of Average by a Harvard School of Education academic. I love academics, not that I'm one, called Todd Rose. And The End of Average starts with a lovely anecdote where Todd talks about when fast jets were first introduced into the US Air Force. And they had a lot of crashes. And they didn't really know why. So obviously they would initially have blamed this new technology, and it wasn't the technology. So then they blamed the pilot. So it must be pilot error. But the pilot said, no, it's not us. There's something weird going on. So they commissioned a study. One of the people on that study had done his doctoral thesis in the human hand. He knew nothing about aircraft at all, but he knew everything about the human hand. He measured every dimension and everything there was to measure about a human hand, and the one thing he knew for certainty about the human hand was that no one on the planet has an average hand, because there are so many variables in a hand that no one has the average hand. And he also knew that the US Air Force recruited to a standardized specification of dimensions of a pilot. So you weren't allowed in if you were too short or too tall or too wide or too thin or too whatever. You had to be within the standard parameters for a pilot. And so they designed all the cockpits in the fast jets according to the standard dimensions that they were recruiting pilots to. And he knew that there was no such thing as an average pilot, and he was right. And the reason why the planes kept crashing was the controls were just in the wrong place for everyone, so that they just had to overreach or underreach to access everything. And when you're traveling at speed, sometimes this caused a problem. And as a result, we now all have adjustable seats in our cars. What Todd goes on to discuss is we have an education system and a school system that is designed around an average pupil. And we all measure ourselves against how we're doing compared to the average pupil. And we have standardized curriculum and standardized tests, and we have standards that we measure ourselves to all the time. And yet the average pupil doesn't exist. And what he would argue is that's perfectly logical for an industrial era, when you couldn't have done and you couldn't have organized the production of the service in any other way. But we can now do something that was previously inconceivable. We now have the technology to be able to design a schooling experience that wraps education around the individual, that ends designing for the average and starts designing for the individual learner and is more about a school system for the consumer of a service than one designed for the convenience of the producer of a service. And amazingly, I quite like that notion. But what's going to stop us being able to do that? Apart from probably a little bit more work on the technology support. Well, we have some pretty unhappy teachers, burdened down by workload. We are losing 30% of teachers within 3 years from the profession in this country. And one of the main reasons why we lose them is their stress attached to all of that workload, attached to not only having to lead on instruction, having to coach, having to judge behavioural issues, having to police, having to lecture, having to be the guide and the mentor, having to do all of the admin, all of the communication home, all of the safeguarding, and the marking and all of the stuff that teachers have to do. So how are you going to find time if you organise the system around the consumer for the producer of the service, the teacher, to be able to do that and to do things differently? And how on earth are you going to persuade them? And so then I started to think about, well, you know, if I look at what AI, as an example, is doing in law, you're starting to see the unbundling of the job of being a solicitor. So IBM Watson have a product which is now being used to create artificial solicitors for some specialisms in law, and are starting to be hired by commercial law companies to do those aspects of law. And they tend to be the very predictable, pretty dull aspects of law, and that then frees up their professionals to do the more interesting human bits of law. And I'm interested in whether or not we could do the same thing with teachers. Could we think about how we unbundle the function of teachers, the various functions of teachers, and have some of them better done by machines to liberate teachers to be able to do those things that they really want to do? And in doing so, retain them in the profession. In doing so, really enhance the humanity of teaching and the human endeavour that is fundamentally teaching. And also allow them to access some other resource, some other latent resource, because we can enhance those other people and other resources using technology. Can we move to happy teachers as coaches on top of their instructional subject knowledge, but stable under a platform of technology and machines, really being able to latch on to the power of parents, peers, and community? You know, I think parents, in the end, probably are the biggest latent resource for teachers. I think for many, they are currently regarded as being a pain in the arse. Because they're either not interested, or they've got sharp elbows and they're way too interested. And why can't teachers just be left to get on with what they are trained to do? And these parents just leave them to it. I've come to believe that it's really important that we think harder about parents having the lead role in the development of their child. And the teacher's job is how best to help them with aspects of that development. And teachers obviously should be taking a leading role in the cognitive development. That's what we're used to teachers doing. But I think there's a lot they can do also in emotional development. There's work they also always need to do to protect children on the margins where there are some environments at home or outside school that are not safe for them. Obviously we want them to do that. But fundamentally I think there's more we can do with parents. And I think we can then use technology to help inform teachers about home, about the circumstances that children are coming into school with. I think we can use technology to enhance the power of peer learning, peer marking, peer teaching, as a significant support. Yeah, I visited a school in Canada recently that was started in a community where the local school had been closed down by the school district, and everyone had to be bused. All the infant children had to be bused 20 minutes to the next community, to a large elementary school. And so a new school was started with the support of the Chamber of Commerce. They gave them a room, they gave them some computers, they fundraised for a few teachers, but the parents are very active because they started the school, and they come in, the school knows what their skills are, and they come in and share those skills with the teachers able to support them. I think there's more that we can do with that. There's more we can do to beam in expertise over video. There's more we can do using technology to know, so the teachers know where to look for those latent resources of people who can bring relevance and inspiration into the classroom and bring the real world into learning, so that children are better prepared for that when they leave education. Now that's a proposition that I'm just starting to think about. I'm starting to think about how machine learning and artificial intelligence might be able to really help us shape a better future. But at the heart of it, there is a huge future for teachers. In all the conversations I've had with the AI experts, they say, there are some things that we can do now which will be fantastic in helping teachers. So what we can now do is, if you took maths, for example, as the one that lots of people worry about, you can now not just use technology to ask questions and test whether or not people have come up with the right answer, but you can use technology to see the workings out that has gone on in order to achieve whatever the answer is that the learners come up with. So that then the technology can flag where the learner may have gone wrong. But what we are a long way from AI being able to do is to be able to then take that point where the learner went wrong and go to the learner and properly understand that individual and where they are emotionally and behaviourally, where their skill set is, where their mindset is, where their behaviour is, and help them understand how to get to the right answer and to fix that problem. The technology then may be able to tell them whether they keep making the same mistake. The technology may be able to find one of that learner's peers who consistently is brilliant at that particular little bit of thinking in maths, who might be able to also help them. But fundamentally, you need a human. And that's my core belief, is that we need loads more teachers as humans, not as robots. We need them globally. We may need to change what teachers do. I'm pretty sure we need to change what teachers do. And that then can open up the profession to a lot more people. But given that we're all going to be learning until we're at least 80, the market for teachers is going to explode. In many ways, we're all going to need to be teachers. So the demand for teacher trainers has to explode. And what sort of teacher trainers do we need? Well, we're going to have to need teacher trainers who are competent with technology. Because the only way we can make the whole system work at a macro level is assisted by technology. And if teachers are not competent with how they do that and how they keep up with the ever-changing nature of technology, then they're not going to be able to do their job of teaching all of us, of every age, how to reinvent ourselves for the multiple careers that we're going to need in order to prosper and to lead relevant, fulfilling lives, which is in the end all of our mission. So that's why I'm patron of ITTE. That's why I'm really happy to be here. Because I think your mission and your purpose is never going to be more important. And whilst at times you may feel an unfashionable little niche, it's a niche that will deepen and grow as and when us policymakers realise your importance. So keep going.
You have.
I have.
You have, yes.